Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and I've got a combo video for you for Dota Underlords today. There's been a balance change to Warlocks and Brutes, as well as, of course, the daily jail meta update that we'll get to in just a moment. So, the balance change, first off, the Disruptor, the Ace of Warlocks, was adjusted. His Ace effect, instead of increasing the number of links per alliance level, the duration of the Warlock link is now increased by 1 second per alliance level. Now, make no mistake, this is a straight-up nerf. This is a definite reduction of power level of Disruptor and Warlocks, and completely a fair nerf because Warlocks were a little bit out of control. I know in my previous patch analysis I had said that I thought this would promote a pretty good and diverse meta. Turns out that Warlocks, specifically 6 Warlocks, were a little bit out of control when you get Disruptor online. The extra links for the Warlock Alliance is just so incredibly powerful. So this is I think a balance improvement. It should bring them more in line, and it doesn't completely kill them or kill the strategy by any means. So just to do some quick math for you here, whenever you just had 2 units linked together, like the normal Warlock, when a Warlock casts, they link to another ally, and then they get some amount of lifesteal. They heal for some amount of the damage dealt, whether that be auto attack or ability damage. And let's say over the course of that duration, you would deal enough to heal 100 damage. So then each of them would heal 200 damage. 100 from both gets contributed to the pool, and they both heal 200 damage. If you add a third unit into that, and assuming it's like the same kind of situation, they add another 100 damage of healing. Now suddenly, instead of having 2 units healed for 200, you now have 3 units healed for 300, and that goes from a 400 total heal to a 900 total heal. So the Disruptor Ace was really more than 100% bonus increase. You more than doubled the healing because of that. So that was definitely too big of a power spike, and it just got really nutty once you got up to 6 Warlocks and got 4 people in the link. It was just silly good. So I'm glad to see they kind of reworked that. I think just multi-link as a concept is cool, but it's way too good, and just trying to balance it in any way is going to be way too clumsy. So I'm glad they got rid of multi-link. I just don't think that's a good mechanic to have in the game. It's too big of a power spike, too multiplicatively good. That being said, I think Warlock should come down to a more reasonable level. You definitely still want Disruptor as an ace, but it should be a little bit more playable without him. Or, I mean, like, the power level drop-off without him and with Disruptor in Warlock builds should be a little bit narrower. They've also adjusted the Brute Alliance. They changed the debuff damage from 30 or the damage debuff for like the minus percent to the opponent from 30-70 to 30-60, so a little bit weaker at 4 Brutes. And also changed the debuff duration from 3 to 4 seconds. Now that may sound like a buff, but it's actually a nerf because the debuff got reapplied almost instantly as soon as it would fall off in most cases, and increasing the duration means that you have a little bit less leeway to or you have a little bit less opportunity to reapply that debuff. If it's going to be lasting a lot longer, you can't apply it as often, and that's when the damage aspect of it gets dealt. So this is going to be a little bit lower damage in like 1 or 2 target situations in terms of the fact that you can't reapply that debuff quite as often. But it is going to be a little bit stronger if you have like 1 Brute in the middle of like 3 or 4 people who they can kind of like go down the line and apply it to everybody, and it's still going to be applied to the first guy by the time they get back to him, or it's just going to be falling off, whereas normally it would have already fallen off and they got a few real hits in. So for most cases, this is a nerf, though, to Brutes, I would say. And not a dramatic one, really, not nearly as dramatic as the Warlock nerf. Brutes are still really, really powerful in the early game. Just getting 2 Brutes is still a massive power spike. Just like Ogre Magi plus Axe is so incredibly powerful, and that's not even counting like Magnus and Treant Protector, who are also great, and Lifestealer. So definitely still put a high priority on Brutes. This just brought them a little bit more in line with some other things, but really it only applies much to the late game. They're still like the best units in the early game, and still put a high priority on them for the early game. Alright, let's get into the daily jail. This updated a little bit earlier today. So this jail, the first thing I notice out of this jail is that it hits Knights pretty hard. We've got Omni Knight, Abaddon, and Dragon Knight out. So unfortunately, it just doesn't really seem likely you're going to be playing too many Knights today with all 3 of those out. And we also see that with Abaddon, Pudge, and Drow Ranger out, a lot of Heartless. Most of the early game Heartless are out. So any kind of Heartless Hunter, Beastmaster kind of strategies that I've really enjoyed. I mean, they have been nerfed repeatedly, but they're still viable, are not going to be viable today just because there's so many Heartless removed from the pool. We've also got Terrorblade out as Terrorblade plus Drow Ranger out for Hunters, so that really puts a damper on a lot of, I'll say, early to mid-game Hunters, but by the late game, you generally aren't playing Terrorblade in many compositions. You're going to be running Sniper, Mirana, Medusa, maybe Beastmaster or Lycan. So I don't think it puts a big damper on the late game Hunters, but definitely hurts the early and mid game. Although Gyrocopter out is not a Hunter, but he does normally pair up with Sniper, so Sniper is kind of in jail without Gyrocopter, so I might try to stay away from Hunters today. I'd definitely put a much lower priority on them, maybe splash them in the late game, or maybe if you get an early Beastmaster, you can still run with that, but even that's not so great. So I'd kind of avoid Knights and Hunters today. We also see 2 of the Warlocks that were recently nerfed. Well, Disruptor was nerfed, the Warlocks themselves were not. To be fair though, Venomancer and Broodmother were kind of some of the lower impact Warlocks, certainly compared to Alchemist, Shadow Fiend. Even Witch Doctor and Mr. Warlock were a little bit more higher impact. So as far as Warlocks being out, these are probably the lower important ones. So you can still kind of try it, but Disruptor's not nearly as big of a payoff as it used to be. Dragon Knight being out is bigger than more than just Knight's strategies. He was often used as a dragon damage dealer in either Warriors when paired up with Viper, or in Mages when paired with Puck and or Snapfire. So obviously that is going to be a big hit to all of those compositions. A lot of like Warriors plus Dragon Knights are definitely hurt by that, and Mage compositions. Although Mages are pretty resilient not having Dragon Knight, they've got plenty of other options, and even with Gyrocopter out, they still have a lot of other options for magic damage. So we don't see any Mages in jail today. So I would like to see a lot of Mages come out, 3 or 6 Mage compositions, just because you have just so many options there to play with them, and pretty much every other strategy got hit at some level, but Mages are pretty much untouched. Nature's Prophet's not too big of a deal. You can definitely still prioritize Druids and Savages like Enchantress and Lone Druid, or Treant and Io. Those are all like the good Druids. Nature's Prophet's probably one of the worst in terms of just the value for his cost. So still put a high priority on Druids for a strong early game along with Brutes. And Timbersaw and Gyrocopter as the last ones out put a bit of a damper on some kind of Inventor scrappy mage strategy, but with the addition of Snapfire recently and the fact that Techies is still in, I still think you can totally try to run kind of 4 Inventor scrappy plus mage composition to get a lot of magic damage on the death damage here from Inventors. So definitely looking for lots of mages today, and of course assassins are pretty much untouched other than Broodmother, so you just need to get Weaver as your insect of choice for assassin compositions. Lots of mages, lots of assassins. You might still try some kind of Druid, Savage, Warrior kind of thing, and there's still some options for Inventor builds as well. So that's a lot to take in. I know I'm still going to be feeling out this meta after the big change to Warlock, the Ace of Warlocks rather. Since the Warlock and Brute was kind of the heavy meta alliance recently, we're now going to be seeing hopefully a bit more diversity because of that. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck in your games today, and I will see you tomorrow.